ISO implementation has a reputation for taking a long time. Sometimes, that's justified. Changing processes takes time. Clarifying responsibilities takes time. Understanding risks takes time. Building competence takes time. Changing how an organization actually works takes time. But a surprising amount of time in an ISO project is spent on something else entirely. Deciding how to implement ISO. The project team interprets the standard. A document structure is discussed. Templates are created. A risk model is designed. Procedures are drafted. Internal audit checklists and the SharePoint folders are reorganized. Again, much of this work is necessary. But does it need to be invented again for every organization? We don't think it does. A better principle: standardize what can be standardized. Adapt what should be adapted. That changes where an ISO project spends its time, towards understanding the organization, making decisions, and building a system people actually use. One of the first problems appears when organizations confuse two different things: the requirements of the standard, and the process for implementing those requirements. An ISO standard describes requirements. It does not arrive with your finished management system. It does not know your organization structure, your customers, your risks, your processes. ND, it does not provide your project plan. Every organization is different, so it feels logical to design everything from scratch. The first statement is true. The second does not follow. A risk register is not a competitive advantage. Neither is an internal audit template, nor a management review agenda. These tools need to fit your organization, but there is little value in inventing their fundamental structure from zero. Yet, experienced people spend project time debating column headings, document layouts, and naming conventions. Then another organization does almost exactly the same thing, 6 months later. The wrong work consumes the right people. Their time belongs on the real questions. What are our real risks? Where are responsibilities unclear? How should this work in our organization? There is another reason ISO implementation becomes slow: how the standard is approached. The project team opens it at page 1. Clause by clause, requirement by requirement, document by document. It feels systematic, but organizations do not operate in ISO clauses. Management does not wake up on Monday morning and manage clause 4. The organization manages customers, suppliers, risks, processes, performance. Treat each requirement as a separate compliance task, and the result is a collection of disconnected documents. A policy over here, a risk register over there, objectives in a spreadsheet. Everything may exist, but it is difficult to see as a system. Meanwhile, the documentation expands. Policies, procedures, instructions, forms, registers, checklists. But a procedure nobody uses creates very little value. There is a difference between asking, "What do we need to show the auditor?" and "How should we manage this well?" The strongest way to create evidence is a management system that genuinely operates. Evidence is the consequence of management, not the purpose. Reverse that logic, and the project becomes a document production project. 20 documents, 30, 40, each needs review, comments, approval. And the question that matters goes unasked: has the organization changed how it works? A gap analysis is an important starting point. It shows the difference between where you are and where you need to be. But if the next step is solving every gap from scratch, the project has only diagnosed the problem. A more efficient model compares today's organization with a defined and proven target structure. Current state, target, gap, adaptation. You are comparing against something concrete, not an empty space labeled ISO compliant. This is the principle behind an accelerator. Before the project starts, much of the methodology already exists. The process, the structures, the templates, governance, guidance, one coherent architecture. Ready-made does not mean copy and paste. 40 generic procedures with your company name inserted create exactly the kind of system organizations struggle to use. Standardize the architecture, not the organization. Standardize the method, how you assess, how you structure, how you follow up. Adapt the content, your risks, your processes, your controls, your objectives. Once that structure exists, the conversation changes. Instead of designing the risk register, management discusses the risks. Instead of drafting templates, process owners improve the process. That is where acceleration comes from. Not by skipping work. By removing work that does not need to be repeated. Speed alone is not enough. An ISO implementation can be completed quickly, and still create a poor management system. One of the greatest risks is building a parallel ISO organization. The business has its processes. Beside them sits the ISO system. Separate meetings, separate action lists, separate risk assessments, separate reporting. That creates duplication, and it eventually makes the system difficult to maintain. If the organization already has an effective process, use it. If actions are already managed in an established platform, use that. Don't create another register. This matters even more when an organization implements several standards: quality, environment, health and safety, information security. If each creates its own system, you end up with 4 context analyses, 4 risk processes, 4 audit programs, 4 management reviews. Shared requirements should become shared processes. Governance, planning, competence, document control, audit, management review. The standard-specific parts remain specific, but you do not need 4 ways of managing the common parts. Integration is often treated as a later optimization. Implement first, integrate afterwards. That means building duplication, then removing it. A better starting question: which parts genuinely need to be different? One organization, one management structure, multiple standards, integrated where relevant. There is one more force that distorts ISO projects. Everything points towards a single event, the external audit. Procedures are hurried through approval. Registers are populated retrospectively. Evidence is assembled. Then the certificate arrives. The project team celebrates. And 3 months later, nobody is quite sure who owns half of the system. The real test starts after certification. Can the organization maintain the system without the implementation project? That is why knowledge transfer cannot be left until the end. Implementation should progressively shift ownership. External expertise leads. Internal participants work alongside. Process owners take responsibility. Then the organization runs it. By the end, the system belongs to the people who operate it. And what was built remains with you. The methodology, the templates, the registers, the knowledge to use them. External support becomes a choice, not a dependency. The organization stops asking, "What do we need to do for ISO?" It asks, "How should we manage this well?" The requirements are embedded in the answer. The main objective with Mentcon's ISO accelerators is better business. Everything needed to maintain and improve the management system is included. That is the thinking behind the Mentcon ISO management system accelerators, part of the Mentcon Management Excellence Framework. To summarize, start with a proven structure. Integrate standards where they overlap. Implement with the people who will use it. And keep the capability afterwards.